Hi, I'm B from Nectar Mechanics, and in today's video, we're going to be making a cel-shaded Optimus Prime utilizing grease pencil material nodes in Blender. So as you've just seen, I have a new intro. I've used it in a couple videos already, and I really love it. The thing is, I didn't record any of how I made it. I thought about it, but to be honest, I wasn't actually expecting it to work. I thought I would just give up on it because animating's hard, rendering's hard, I only know 3D modeling for printing and stuff. But it turned out really well. It's one of the things I'm most proud of that I've made. And I figured, I've learned an awful lot in essentially a week. Why not I share that with you? So this will not be a tutorial on Blender, this will be a guide as to what I did, and I will link to all the tutorials I used to help me get there. So I really like Transformers, and the original cartoon they did is cel-shaded, and I really want to emulate that style in 3D. So that's what I'm going to do. To start off with, we need a 3D model of one of the characters, and we're going to do Optimus because it's Optimus Prime. He's the main one. He's really cool. First, we're going to do his head. He needs a noggin, and I'm using the actual character sheets they made for the animation originally. This means that I have a picture of him from pretty much every angle so that I can reference it as nicely as I want. And after a couple hours of modeling, just extruding vertices and scaling cubes and whatnot, I had a model that was pretty much there. There's a couple of things I've learned since I last used Blender for Doom Guide that was super useful. Number one, if you want something to look smooth, you can just select it and right-click and shade smooth. It's dumb but easy. Another thing is that once you have all the mesh complete, I made this whole monologue about how there was no neat models. I didn't make a neat model. You can literally just select all, merge by distance, and then it will automatically get rid of all the inside bits and make it one solid mesh. Once his head was about there, I wanted to see if I can get the cel shading working. There's no point doing the rest of the model if it's just gonna flop. I used primarily TipTut's tutorial on making 2D, 3D cel-shaded mushrooms. In his tutorial, he taught me how to use a diffused BSDF, which I then connected to a shader to RGB, which in turn was connected to a color ramp with the darker shades on the left and the bright on the right. This was then finally connected to the material output. This is in the shading section of Blender, and it's a section I've deliberately avoided. All of those blocks, all of those nodes just floating about, there's so many of them, you connect them, it was a lot. So this tutorial really helped me get through it. And at the end of it, I had a pretty much working cel shade effect. Now, before I carry on making the rest of the model, I need to do something else. This is all great and all, but there's no edges. And in the 80s cartoon, they're all hand-drawn with black lines on the edges. So I need to figure out how I do that. I discovered a feature in Blender called grease pencil. It's another thing that I haven't touched much of, and it's mainly used for 2D animation inside of Blender. But you can merge it with 3D models. Most of the time, you'll just have two at the same time, or you'll use it to draw onto a 3D model. But for this, I figured out that you can do it for the edges. Originally, I was going to hand draw each individual line until I discovered that you can literally just go and select the object, click Shift Add, and then add grease pencil line art. Boom! It immediately does it all for you on the entirety of the model, and you can choose the line thickness, the randomness, the settings, the glow, the whatever. You can tweak it as much as you want, and it will automatically do it on all of the edges. It was exactly what I was after. Now, there is one thing that I want to just let you guys know because it drove me crazy for hours. It will render the line art facing towards the camera. And what I mean by that is I kept having an issue where I had it on his face, I would turn the model around, and for some reason I can see his eyes through the back of his head. But that's because the camera that I was using to take the pictures and the renders and everything is on the front. It's trying to render a 2D line art onto a 3D object. It doesn't think about the back of the object because it can only see the front. It's 2D. It sounds obvious. It is obvious. I should have realized, but I didn't, and I'm going to use this video to warn you all in advance. That way, you don't need to suffer like I did. But once that was sorted, I could finally do the last material feature I wanted to do, which was make his eyes glow, because that's gonna be fun. To do that, you need to make sure you tick bloom in the render settings, otherwise it's just not even gonna think about it. Then you just go to your materials, add an emission, choose the emission strength, boom. That easy. This is why I like 3D modeling. You can just do really cool effects with so little steps. So we got it looking like a cel shader, we've got it having the line art, we've got it glowing. Let's just make the rest of the model. Most of the time, I would start off by using a cube. It's G1, they're all made of cubes. It's the closest shape to start off with most of it. But I would do lots of funky cuts and effects. One thing I found that's really useful is if you select a face, click E to extrude, but hit escape so it doesn't go anywhere, and then just hit S to scale, it'll create a perfect cut that matches the outline of the object that you've just done that to. So in my instance, I had a face of a cube. I could do the extrude, scale, cut, and then I could scale it ever so slightly inwards, and then extrude it into the body, and bam, I have the windows of the truck in his chest. There's lots of other fun stuff, like getting to do the grill, which looks so lovely when it's got the line art added. I would sort of work my way down the body, so I'd start off with the head, so I'd do the chest, then I would do the arms, then I had to do hands. I hate hands. Everyone hates hands. I especially hate hands. A little workaround I found is that you can actually just take pictures of your own hand from the angles you need and essentially trace it. It doesn't immediately fix all of your problems with it, but it certainly helps. So we've basically made the rest of his body now. Let's make sure we have a truck mode for him to transform into. And make sure to keep it in the same file, that way I have easy access to all the materials I've just made. And again, started off with the closest objects, which in this case was the cube. I had screenshots from the cartoon to help me work with this. I couldn't find any character sheets. There might be some somewhere, but I couldn't find them. And bit by bit, I would just extrude, scale, cut, and we started having some semblance of a truck mode. A key thing is that I want this to be able to be animated, so I'm going to make sure the wheels are a separate piece so that way it's a little bit easier to rake them later on. One fun thing is that he's got his little Autobot badges in truck mode, not in robot mode for some reason. So to make these, I would just import a picture, trace it out, extrude it so it had a little bit of thickness, made the outer edge color red to match the rest of the truck, but the slight inside edge white to give it contrast, and then with the line art, it just pops. It's brilliant. Now we're basically done, but one thing we need to make sure before we stop is to give him headlamps. And again, I could just make a new material, make sure it had an emission strength, match the colors to what I want, and I think we're done. We're done with the truck, that is. We still need to make an armature for the robot to move. To be entirely honest with you, I don't have any great tips for making the armature. Using an IK modifier, inverse kinematics, is really tricky to set up, and I'm still kind of fiddling with it as I'm recording. I did make it work. It's how I animated the robot in my intro, but for some reason, it doesn't want to play nice with the Optimus model. So in these final shots, I've literally just grabbed the objects and rotated them into the pose I want. Next week's video, I will make sure that I've completed the armature, and I will begin doing some test animations. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the final renders. That looks super cool. It looks like my childhood. I used to watch the old 80s cartoon a lot, and that cel-shaded style is just something that really stuck with me. And to be able to make it myself with tools that I've learned is just kind of nuts. So obviously I still need to make an armature so I can animate him, and to be honest, a lot of it's kind of jank because I'm new to it, but I'm really chuffed with how much I managed to learn in a week. So please check in next week to see how I go with animating, and if you have any particular clips from either one of the Transformers cartoons or movies, it doesn't just have to be G1, please let me know down in the comments what you would like to see me animate him to. Whether it's him doing his iconic one shall stand, one shall fall line, or talking to Sam in the movies, or maybe an inspiring speech in Transformers Prime. Please, let me know. Otherwise, if you want more Transformers content, make sure to come back next weekend as I'm doing another Cybertraining Saturday. Until then, farewell!